Welcome to Intimate Conversations, where we support you in healing heartbreak so you can live fully embodied, unapologetically, and deliciously free, being exactly who you are. We are sponsored by Magic Mind, my morning elixir that I swear gives me more focus, expands my joy, and puts an extra spring in my step. So, okay, you luscious creature, it is time to get intimate. Hello, you delicious people. Welcome to another episode of Intimate Conversations with somebody that I got on like a house on fire when she was interviewing me. And I said, oh, please come and bless our world. The amazing Jolie Hamilton. Jolie or Jolie? How do you prefer me say it?
I usually just say Jolie because it's actually short for Jolene.
Jolene. Okay, good.
Which gets me lots of Dolly Parton sung to me.
I know it. I love it. And that's also her website, people. Jolie Hamilton, Joli. I'll have this all in the show notes, but there's going to be a quiz there as well that we will tell you about later. But let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a relationship coach for couples who color outside the lines. She's a research psychologist, TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and AASECT, AASECT certified sex educator. And she also co-hosts the Project Relationship podcast with her anchor partner, Ken. And I got to be on that podcast. It was such an honor and privilege. She has spent the past 2 decades studying and reimagining what love can be if we open our imaginations to possibility. And she helps people create non-monogamous partnerships that are custom built for their authentic selves. No more shrinking, no more pretending, and no more hiding required. So first, it's just great to see you again. How are you? You said you're
so good to see you. It's busy, right? Summer needs to have its break times, but right now it is busy because there is research to be done.
Okay. Research to be done. So why don't we, I want to support the listeners, maybe some like definitions of these different terms. Maybe you can weave in the research you're doing with what is non-monogamy partnerships, etc.
Yeah. Okay. This is a great place to start because a lot of times people think that non-monogamy couldn't possibly be for them. But really, when we think about consensual non-monogamy, you can just think about it on a spectrum with monogamy and think about how do you make spaces where you know you're exclusive and how do you make spaces where you know you're expansive in your relationship?
Okay.
Consensual non-monogamy is about people who lean more toward autonomy and agency around their sexual, emotional, financial, child rearing, all of those sorts of things. They figure out where they want to be open, where they want to connect with more than one person. People who are over on the monogamous end of a spectrum are thinking about where I want to be exclusive. And often they imagine that their exclusivity is everywhere. But I mean, you have great friends, right? You have great connections with other people. Lots of us could actually imagine ourselves somewhere on that spectrum. And I tend to work with people who want to really dive into what it's like to be open sexually and emotionally, specifically with your sexual and or emotional intimacy. So it also brings up some stuff, right? Because
a shitload of stuff. Yeah. So it's one thing to be, because I've interviewed Carol and David, they are swingers, but they are very specific. They're emotionally monogamous. Yep. They are not having sex with any of the heart connection, or it's just this pure sexual pleasure. And they were very, very clear about that. So help us to understand what you mean by the sexual or the emotional, and because they can get intertwined.
Yeah, exactly. So this is great. I'm glad that you've talked to somebody about the swinging lifestyle. So I might think of that as the polysexual, somebody they're ready to be in that space of multiplicity when they think about sex as a physical act. So maybe for them, they've decided that, anything up to and including penetrative sex, really deep, fun, luscious, body-centered connection is great. And I work with people who've decided, yep, and we're gonna level that up and also include what happens if I fall in love with more than one person? Right. What happens if I want to maintain open, emotionally deep connections with more than one person in a culture specifically that doesn't support that? And that's where the tricks really come. Because it's one thing to negotiate for that in your partnership. Yeah, and then we have to think about, and the container that's holding us all isn't necessarily going to have given us the skills that we need to do this without hurting each other. And that's where I come in.
Yeah. So this is awesome. So we've got clarity. Now back up to your personal life and what's going on in your world and how you're using what you've learned to help others.
Yeah. So I became a research psychologist because I jumped out of a monogamous marriage where I was following all the rules, but then I fell in love with somebody.
Yeah.
And this happens, right? And I didn't take an action, but I fell in love and I told my partner. I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire then because I couldn't figure out what to do with the feeling. And so I find myself 13 years later, a full-time jealousy researcher. What I do is ask people to share their stories of jealousy with me so that I can get a richer understanding of what jealousy is, what it's trying to teach us and tell us, and how we can work with it in productive ways. Because I don't believe psyche would deliver all this jealousy to us if there wasn't a reason for it to be here.
Totally.
And since a lot of us really do share depth of emotionality with friends, and this was my own personal story. I wanted to be able to share that depth of emotionality with somebody who I was also attracted to. That got really sticky really fast right now, because this is the line that a lot of us draw around where we can have intentional intimacy, right? We say, okay, but if we're talking about, say, a heterosexual couple, he might say, sure, you can have girlfriends, you can have friends. You're going to go to the beach with them. You're going to share your deepest feelings with them, but you're not allowed to do that with guys. We see the remnants of this everywhere. It draws all these lines around what's acceptable in our friendships. And this impacts every aspect of our life, because now we actually have these gender divisions happening that aren't necessarily authentic to us. Like they may be prescribed, because I'm bisexual. So that rule doesn't even make sense in my life.
Well, there you go.
Right. So I study jealousy because I think that if we start to understand it, we can really dive into what need is coming up? What do you need to feel secure in this relationship? Because just because you decide to go down the non-monogamous path doesn't mean you want to do what I did. I set fire to my life. I would not recommend it. I didn't know what I was doing. So I set fire to the foundations of it. And what we need to do is reinforce the foundations and understand how we're going to let ourselves make something new. And the swinger lifestyle is one option. Many people find that, we can draw a box around sex and we can define what activities go into that box. And we can say, okay, if we're together in a space and it's just about sex, we can be multiplicitous. We can just be exploratory and it'll be fine. And then inevitably, someone's going to bring up at some point, what happens when there are feelings? What do we do then? And I wonder, I think about the work you do with people, and I think about how you talk about needing to state what's true for you, needing to be really clear and not accept less than what's true for you. Yeah. That's really where my work is too. Like, for some people, this will mean the ending of some relationships. Yeah. For some people, they will not be able to create the partnership they want because monogamy is what one of them wants. Polyamory is what another of them wants. Then at that point, we're talking about graceful transitions. Yeah. How do we do this with respect and care? Because I did not do it that way. Mm-hmm. And if I could go back and do it over again, that's what I would change. I wouldn't change the falling in love with someone else. I wouldn't change being unconventional, even though it's been hard at times. But leaving a relationship in a way that doesn't leave you really in integrity with your values and yourself, that doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good.
Yeah. So continue on. I just love how we go so deep so fast. You're just magnificent. So in the setting your life on fire, recognizing the foundations, the agreements, the conversations weren't there. You've learned a lot about that. Tell us more about that. How did you discover? Because I have my own way of taking people into their truth, their bodies, healing anything unintegrated. So it's pre-thought, knowing that you are bisexual. You are like, how did you come to know you, Jolene, first?
Yeah. Well, I I was awake in a very erotic sense, very early.
Yeah.
And I remember very early on not having any understanding of how somebody could wake up and just know that a whole gender was just not for them. I just didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. So that was definitely precognitive knowing. It was built into me that I would fall for people because I did. It would just happen when it happened.
Yeah.
But what I found is, as I was enculturated, as I grew up, right, I lost the ability to tap into that. I lost the ability to find out what my truth was because I started following a pre-written script. And that pre-written script said I should marry a man, I should do it quickly because that was the habit in the place I was growing up, and I should make babies right away. And I did all those things. But as I did them, it became harder and harder to know anything was actually true for me. I lost touch with that. Exactly. I think what you're pointing to, that being able to go inside, touch your body.
Like ache in my heart right now as you're talking.
Yeah, it was just gone. And a lot of people talk about how they live in their heads. And certainly you can hear, I do like to run to my intellect. Absolutely. But that's not where I was running to. I was running so far outside my body. I wasn't even in my head. I was just running away, away, away. In the meantime, I'd made babies. I made a life. And I liked a bunch of the parts of that. And that's where I often catch people is they've built a life they love. And something happens. For me, I call it a numinous moment. I just had a full-on thunderbolt knowing of there's more. You want more. You want connection at a deep level with other. I couldn't unknow that.
Yes.
And following all the scripts, there was no place to go. I was locked in. There was no place to turn. And that's where, if I had had the tools that I teach people now, I would have approached the conversations around what exactly are we doing in our marriage? What is our monogamy? What's the point of it? What's it for? So that we can get clear. And it may be that we still came to an end. That is definitely possible. But sometimes what I see people do is wake up to the fact that they've just been both going along with a script, and neither of them actually needs the script or wants the script. They just were following it because we make all of these assumptions, and then we go along, we built a life, and now here we are 15 years later. Yeah. Just doing that. And we have to get back to that deep inner knowing. And then we have to learn how to have the conversations that will authentically share that with our partners. And that's a big, scary thing for a lot of people. It was a big, scary thing for me. Sometimes it still is, but it's where the juice is, those big conversations.
Oh, for sure. That the going into the shadow is where all the light is, for sure. For sure. And it's motherfucking intense.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But so is living fully motherfucking intense, right? So to be alive, right? And to really suck the marrow out of it, which is to me, this intimate communion with life, all of it, right?
Right. That's it. So for me, it was like the full catastrophe arrived and I was there for it. And it wasn't accepted in my world. So what I needed to know is that, in fact, there were others. And it wasn't actually about polyamory or monogamy. It was actually about people who wanted to live the full catastrophe, who wanted to be totally engaged in the whole thing. And that line, the full catastrophe, comes from a book my mother had on the shelf when I was growing up by John Kabat-Zinn. And she wasn't a spiritual person, but that book still sits on my bookshelf today, because I think it sums up like my core code. Just live the full catastrophe. It's going to be messy.
Yes.
That's okay.
Oh, that's so beautiful though, because within that is like the demise and the creation all at once.
Right.
It's like it's evolution. Yeah.
Right. It's where the activity of life is. Jung talks about, so I'm a Jungian psychologist, so I quote Jung. So Jung talks about how we don't actually want to rid ourselves of our complexes. We don't want to rid ourselves of these terribly, gnarly, shadowy bits. We want to come into a relationship with them, because if we were to rid ourselves of them, that's called death. That's what that is. This is just the energy nodes that run through us. So many people are trying to look for a cure or a solution. And that's where my jealousy work, people will ask for a cure. I'm like, we don't want to cure your jealousy. We want to start using it for what it's designed for, which is just another one of those shadowy elements that can actually expose you to so much light.
This is so good. So what is the gift of jealousy? What is its message? What is, how can we use it for expansion, evolution?
Yeah, jealousy has several messages, but a really important one that everyone can make use of is jealousy is an indication that you care deeply about a person. And I want you to peel jealousy away from envy for a second. Envy is about wanting to be someone else or have what they have. So it's just two in the relationship. Jealousy is a triangle, always a triangle. Jealousy is about, I have my beloved and I fear an interrupter. The interrupter does not have to be real. It can be imagined. Instagram makes interrupters no problem. But it's this triangular feeling. And when jealousy comes, we go into survival mode because we fear the disconnection from our beloved. And if we can imagine that when jealousy arrives, we actually have acknowledgement from our deepest self that we care a lot about this person. And what I ask, especially cisgender women to do, is shift your focus back from this third, back to your partner, because you just got information. You just got full information that you care deeply about this person.
Yeah.
Tend to that relationship, to that connection. Attend to it. Stop looking at the third. It's actually irrelevant because there will always be interrupters. There will always be potential threats. We live in a world. It's alive. There are going to be threats. But you get to connect to your beloved. And that, I don't care how many beloveds you have. Every time you have one, right? So turn your attention. Jealousy is designed to tell you that you care about someone. And it's neutral until you decide how to act on it. Most people feel like jealousy is this dark, horrible thing. And even the APA describes it as a negative affective state. And a negative affective state is antithetical to our goals, achieving our goals. But that's just not the case. Jealousy was a gift, hard written into our code when we were born. It was designed to connect us to our primary caregiver, right? So it's designed to connect us. So when jealousy rises up, and if we feel that survival mode coming on, I see two steps that are absolutely important. We have to remember that it's our beloved that we want to turn attention to, not the interrupter. That's a distraction. You'll just get distracted. Don't let that happen. And then we need to connect to ourselves, because what we might be doing is forgetting that it's us. Jealousy is mine. I don't need my partner to do something different. We may need to have boundary conversations. We might have to talk about needs and wants and desires, but the jealousy itself is mine. I don't have to wait for anyone else to do anything. All I have to do is tune into the fact that the jealousy is mine and I get to work with it right now. I don't have to wait for anybody. It's really powerful to reclaim this. Anytime we reclaim a piece of shadow, right, we have more of ourselves.
Yeah. So let me say something and keep asking a question. My experience with anger, for example, is when my heart is closed to the anger, i.e. I judge the anger, I'll either suppress it, become depressed, or I'll project it and do something that I feel guilty about or ashamed about or what have you. But if I open my heart to the anger and befriend, I suppose, the intensity of the anger, I see that it's just fierce love saying this does not align. This is out of integrity. This is not aligned with my values. Like, we need to do something about this. I'm like, it's my friend. And we go arm in arm and it's very intense. That's for sure. But it's not bad. Right. It's just information in the form of intensity. And so I'm feeling a similar flavor, Jolene, that this jealousy, if I focus on myself, okay, hi, jealous one inside, you have every right to feel this way. You are concerned about the survival of your beloved or the maintaining of your beloved. You have every right to feel this way. So open the heart to it and get into relationship with it, and then focus on yourself and focus on your partnership. Then to me, you're not in the reactive state. You're in the responsive. You can calm yourself down and you can respond. And as you said about agreements or conversations, etc., what would you say happens next after, okay, heart open to the jealousy. This is for me, not against me. Hello, sweet one. You have every right to feel this way. I got you. Yeah.
This is, a big opportunity here. If somebody's really willing to go in deep, a big opportunity is to look, since this came from pre-verbal state.
Yeah.
You've got the opportunity to go back and do your inner child work right in front of you. It was just handed to you. Like,
yeah.
Jealousy is about fearing. It's about abandonment fear. It's about fearing disconnection, right? So you may have just been given a great, big, awful, difficult, intense feeling that indicates exactly where your next piece of work is. And a lot of times people forget that when we work on that inner child stuff, we work that material. We don't need to fix it. We simply need to be with it. Just like you're saying, just be with it. Remind yourself that it's there. I still feel jealousy. People ask me all the time. So you must have, resolved it. You must not feel it. Well, no, I absolutely do. But when it comes in, I know, yes, to open my heart to it, to be patient with it, to go back. Yeah. Hold my infant self, hold my toddler self, and just be with that little version of myself. And to remind myself that my partner isn't my caregiver. They're my partner. They're my peer. And I get to stand all the way up and roll my shoulders back and come into my prefrontal cortex and say, right, I get to negotiate for the relationship I want. Mm-hmm. What's the next step? Because you may have some very specific conversations that you need to have around boundaries, around needs, around desires, around expression. But it's really hard to have those conversations if you are 6 months old.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Or in the other part of your brain that just wants to kill before you get killed.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's take it back to your story. And you didn't know what you know now. And so you maybe reacted versus responded. And the relationship ended. Is that what happened?
Yeah. So I went in with this beautiful naivete. I told my husband at the time, I hopped into the shower with him and told him I was in love with somebody else. I genuinely believed in that moment that love was love and it would be fine. We'd just work it out. I wasn't saying I needed to do anything, but I was like, this feeling is here and I'm going to share it. Yeah. The trouble was I hadn't looked at the context of our relationship. If I had the foresight at the time to just step back and look what was going on. We just opened a new business. He had left his longtime career to be in this business. So there was some financial instability that we weren't really talking about. There were some other issues we weren't talking about, particularly around intimacy. And when we were talking about them, we were locked in the same conversation we'd been in for many years. There was so much we could have done to have those conversations, but they needed to happen without this idea of an interrupter, because now my partner was put into this position of, wait, what? Now there's somebody who's going to come and break my bond. He went into reactive mode. He went deeply into reactive mode. And now I'm managing that and my own confusion. And we just swirled. We swirled and it was painful. And if we had slowed down and I had been able to be circumspect about it, I would have found myself sitting with somebody to really finally admit what I needed in my marriage and to allow him out if he couldn't give that to me. Yes. But to say it, to really say it.
So beautiful. So let's say, not that I don't believe you needed a do-over because you learned so much and now you teach so much, right? So no regrets here. But if you were to speak as if this was happening in the future to yourself or to maybe one of your clients, these truth conversations with total allowance of the other and their truth as well. How do you support couples in getting to those conversations, those truth conversations? Because if we can't have them with ourselves, we can't have them obviously with another. So there's so much inner work we need to do. But then when we actually start to open our mouth, how do you guide couples through this?
Yeah, there are a couple of really important things that happen. One is I work with couples and we do one session together and then we do sessions apart, session
Same.
together, session apart, right? There is something there because it's okay if your partner isn't working at the same pace or on the same things that you are. And I
Right.
like to create space for that. So yeah, I really appreciate the space to do that so that we can also craft those conversations. What is it that needs to get said that just isn't? And often what I need is to allow somebody, yeah, in the one-to-one session, tell me what it is that needs to be said. And if you can't, then let's have you just dream up. Let's dream the dream forward. Let's just imagine that you could have anything. Because often people have foreclosed so much of their future. They've just decided what they can't have.
Mm-hmm.
But I see people reinvent their relationships every day. So in fact, there's so much possibility, but they need permission to open up their imagination. And the first conversation I want them to bring to their partner isn't, can I go on this date or can I fuck somebody else? It's not that. It's, let's talk about fantasy. Let's imagine beyond our bubble. Let's imagine. If we can't talk about our sexual fantasies together, then are we really ready to open up a dating app? No. Are we really ready to explore? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
And that's where there's this beautiful time of exploration that can happen. And for some people, it's a month or two. For some people, it's almost a year of exploration toward that opening process. When I work with people, it's always in this arc of exploration. I call it a spiral because you're going to come back to your same sticky spots over and over. You're going to be traveling this spiral. And as long as you continue to move on it, it's even okay if you get off pace from each other. You just keep talking. Yeah. It's such a creative process. They have to imagine a new future.
Beautiful. I'm thinking of a client and he wouldn't do the work, just she. So it was challenging. But I would be that space for her to express what at the time he couldn't hear and to express what was true for her and integrate at least half of the relationship, which led to better communication, which led to some breakdowns and breakthroughs. And it was beautiful. I would much rather have had both of them there, but you'll work with what you got to work with. So I so love this, the idea of being heard without being judged. Because to me, communication is two pieces. There's the talker, but if you're not received without judgment or avoidance or how could you, the communication didn't succeed because now it's just going to stay spinning in you and this one's reactive. And now, so this third party, I think, is very, very wise in the unfolding and exploration of all of this. I love this. What happened when your relationship completed? Because now you're remarried and it's, would we call it a non-monogamous relationship? So what did you do differently and how is it working? And apparently you still get jealous. So it's not like you're living in this fairy tale bubble and everything's perfect. So it's like every relationship has its ups and downs, whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous, right? So tell us more about your next step of your journey.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to acknowledge that somehow I wound up married to that person who I fell in love with all those years ago.
Really? Oh, wow.
Okay, and the reason this is important, I like to just name it because it often shocks people because they think that I must have planned this. And I think, God, I wish I had, but I have known this human since I was born. Oh. He's been in my life, in my stratosphere the whole time.
Wow.
If we had known, we had plenty of option. We had plenty of option before that. This was an unfolding that happened when I left my marriage and we completed, and it was messy because there was never that beautiful resolution that you get when you really talk it through and you work it through and you work it through your heart. Yeah. It was messy, but what I didn't get to do there, it left a really indelible mark. There were things that I became aware of that I wanted to do differently. Yeah, and so as I started to have a non-monogamous relationship with a new partner, and he was married at the time and they were non-monogamous. And so here I am, I find myself in this triadic situation and I'm like, oh, okay, this is all new. The one thing that I knew was I didn't want to repeat my mistakes. I wanted to make new mistakes.
Yeah.
So I made new mistakes. And it took years of floundering because I didn't have the language. This started in 2009. We didn't have all the resources we do now around the language of non-monogamy. And if there's something I could offer to people, what I would offer them is get a vocabulary and start integrating new words to talk about love, to talk about feelings, to talk about intimacy. Start putting words like non-monogamy or swinging, like understand what the word means and make sure you're on the same page with your partner. Because often we're writing a whole story in our head, but we don't have vocabulary, let alone a shared vocabulary. So we're writing a story about what we can have, what we can imagine in the future, what's possible, without ever putting words to it, because the words make it real and then we're scared. I would go back and I would hand that girl I would just hand her a stack of books and I'd say, you need words. You need words and you're going to make mistakes, but you need words so that you can start having a conversation. So like you make the non-monogamy that works for you and it's not going to look like anybody else's. That's where I really value, and I'm sure this is the same in your work. The coaching process lets you help someone create the relationships that they want to have.
Yes.
Which is different from when I try to follow a checklist of what a good relationship is. No, that's not the same thing. I can't do that. It's the process of questioning, inquiry, conversing. That can't be replaced because I'm going to make something unique to me. I think we're always negotiating a creative solution for our relationships.
Stunning. Because we keep evolving and growing, which would mean the relationship keeps evolving and growing, right?
That's where I am. Definitely. Like my non-monogamous relationship doesn't look like one thing. It looks like many things. Over the course now of 13 years, it has taken many forms, including times when we looked ostensibly monogamous. But for us, there was still, and there is still when that happens, when neither of us is seeing anyone else. Yeah, but our philosophy underlies the whole thing, right? So the philosophy is that openness exists. And so for us, we don't fall into a state of, okay, it's just us and I don't have to pay attention to anything outside of it. Nope. That non-monogamous ground is still there. It's still part of our ontological truth. Like it's there. It's our basis. It's not right or wrong, but it leaves us in a place where we have to have conversations. We have to.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get surprised. Nobody wants.
Because that feels like being blindsided. Yeah.
Exactly.
So explain what it's like to, and so I'm not sure you're married with your husband and each of you have partners on the side.
Yeah.
And so how do you verbalize to your partner, or I guess to yourself first and then to your partner, that because I love everybody. I can't help it. And as soon as I let myself love my clients, my capacity to coach just went skyrocketed. So like, I get that I'm a facilitator of this love. At this point in my life, I would just lose my shit. If I'm barely fucking trying to get like one relationship to work, let alone like juggling many. But it's not to say I'm not open to evolving, because that's all I ever do is evolve. But right now I can full on love everybody, but I full on can't be with having sex with lots of people. Yeah. So how does it feel to full on love more than one person and full on have sex with more than one person and full on have both genders and the whole thing? And it feels real and you express it in a way that lands, I'm assuming, and he says the same thing. And like, what is it that, well, I just went to the grocery store today and I'm going to not come home tonight. Or like, what does it like really sound like, look like, feel like, the whole thing?
Okay, I love this question because it's going to look different, not just our relationship to another relationship, but also day to day. We just went through a pandemic and it looked just like any monogamous relationship because we had to lock down too. And we weren't seeing anyone right when it happened. I had just finished my dissertation, so we weren't seeing anyone. So we were like, okay, I guess we're just doing this. So we were basically monogamous for like 18 months. It was the longest we'd ever been. It was kind of a thing, but it can always change. And what it sounds like is okay. You may have a moment here, but it sounds so sweet It's adorable. It's watching your partner be giddy over someone and something and have already made the cognitive commitment and the body commitment to being excited for them, being happy that they're happy, being excited that they're going to go have an adventure. And it's not that it never brings up other stuff, but because we've been practicing it for a long time, it just brings up this delicious feeling. There's a name for this feeling. The word is compersion, and it means feeling joy for your partner's joy.
Yeah.
And it's a great word. And it's not just for non-monogamy. You can feel this about your partner having any kind of joy.
Sure.
That commitment and having practiced it so long looks like, so my partner happens to be pretty shy. So honestly, when he connects with someone, I have a full-on body, like, shivers, because I'm so excited for him, because I know that meant that he broached, so like he crossed that bridge, which for him is hard to do. He just struggles with it. So it's really easy to get into a place of excitement. And then come the conversations about, okay, what will this turn into? Because a date here, a date there, that's one thing. But over the course of time, now you have relationships developing. These are people. So you said something earlier. You said you're married and you have other people on the side. And I would say what it is we're married, and it's not the marriage that makes us a bubble, but we're raising our children together and we own a house together. So those things mean that we have to have these conversations that are very practical, and they're not fun and they're not juicy. They're, hey, but you have to come home from the grocery store because you have the milk. They're very boring conversations that have to happen. And so we build in time for the boring conversations. And then we try to build in as much time as we possibly can for the conversations that let us enjoy each other having other relationships. And that part is, for me, what fuels the whole thing. So when he's having other relationships and he's excited and he's talking about love and he's talking about relating, I'm excited. I can genuinely be excited for him. I think the hardest thing to manage is when your partner is hurting, because that's going to happen too. You know, he's watched me last summer. He watched me go through 3 breakups right after another, and it was rough. I fall hard. I fall fast. I fall hard, and it was just boom, boom, boom. And he was patient with that, and he sat with it. And he sat with my pain. And I can't imagine anything that could deepen our intimacy more than him sitting with my pain over losing other relationships. It's profound. It's a thing that, well, I can't imagine us being who we are today and having the conversations we do without the sort of proof that is. Like, wow, you'll sit even with that. You'll sit with me in tears over the loss of someone else, when he could spiral into like, well, what the hell's wrong with me? But I'm right here. And why do you need anything more? He could. And instead, he just slows way down and reminds himself that my loss has nothing to do with his worth. So this is an opportunity for each of us to ground into a really deeply felt sense of worth. And that's the part that's the hardest for me. I have to come back to over and over. Even just saying it, I have my hands on my abdomen and my solar plexus. I'm like, yeah, you're worthy of love. And it has nothing to do with how many people your partner loves or what else they do. You're worthy of love no matter what. It's a practice. It's this like constant practice of worth, depth, patience, a lot of patience.
Wow. So thank you for that you're able to be with each other's joy and with each other's sorrow, be with each other's anger, let down, blindsided, like everything.
Yeah. That's the hardest. That's the hardest thing, right? To be with a partner, for me, to be with a partner where I can't fix what they're going through. And for him too, to sit with me when you can't fix it. But that's the same stuff that will let us go through the inevitable. Well, we've walked through deaths. We've walked through, these huge losses together. But lets us do that.
Wow. Thank you. Do you each choose to bring a third person into your bedroom as well? Or do you have just relationships outside of the main house with the kids? Or how do How do those grocery store logistics work with with that?
Yeah, the logistics are interesting. So we made a commitment years ago not to have any other adults live in our house until the youngest kids were 18, because we'd both gone through divorces at that point and we didn't want to complicate things. So there's like, that's a boundary, and that's a boundary that I name with new partners right away. Like, oh, this is just a thing. So that's not on the table. However, there are lots of styles of relating. I've had people who are just totally mine off, like we have our own relationship. Ken might meet them, but no even friendship really, just sort of a, wave hello when I get picked up for a date. But we do, in fact, have people who come into our bed and we have a 3-way, we have a 4-way, because they're people who we've connected with. Those connections for us aren't so much about dating together as about that opening to sexual intimacy in a multiplicitous way, in that like really body-centered way. I don't think about that so much as building relationships for us. Not that it couldn't be, but for us, it's been about just being in the sexual intimacy, just being in the pleasure of that. And those people are some of our easiest and most joyful relationships, because now we've had them in our lives for a long time. And it's this easeful, like, there's just no line about where, that people might come over for appetizers, but they might stay for after dinner. It's not, it's actually so much easier than people think it will be, because it's not pre-described. Like, we're not deciding ahead of time how everything will play out. We just have a set of boundaries that we work within. So for instance, we have STI boundaries. Like, we have a set of things that we talk about. We ask, when's the last time you were tested? What are the barrier methods that you use? What's your current birth control? We have these things that we always check. That's very practical. You have to have those conversations, and you have to have them every single time.
Yeah.
And then there are other conversations like, if you're going to have somebody in my bed, make sure you wash the sheets afterward. That's just, I like the sheets washed. There are so many little pieces to the conversation that could only evolve over the course of time, because they're very personal. When I ask most people what their boundaries are around, say, having someone in their bed, usually there's a bristle, like, oh, I could never do that. But then if I tell you a story about like, and what if this happened? Often there's a softening and well, if there was feeling, or if I felt safe, or if I were doing something else, maybe that would be okay. Okay. Yeah. You probably don't know all the answers yet. That's fine. Stay in that space of discovering together what's working, and knowing that you can always set a boundary. Nobody's taking your boundaries away from you just because you decide that you're going to explore non-monogamy. You still get to have boundaries. You still get to have your limits. You don't have to say yes to anything you don't want to. Otherwise, it's not consensual.
Yeah, totally.
It has to be ongoing and freely given at all times, and reversible.
So you can try something and then say, hey, actually, this doesn't work for me.
Exactly. Yeah. And that becomes part of the conversation, which also lets us be really exploratory in the sex life we have together, because we practice this asking, right? Like, he'll still ask me, he'll lean in for a kiss and ask me, not every single time, but he'll ask me if he can kiss me in a certain way. And it's because we're in that practice of consensual negotiation, which means we're always discovering new ways that we want to touch each other, that we want to be with each other. And we have to practice that. Otherwise, things become rote. We forget that we need to practice, because we're always becoming. I mean, you're changing every day.
Totally.
Who knows what you'll do tomorrow?
So not every time he kisses you, but literally on a weekly, I don't know how often the basis is, you literally say, do you say like, how would you like to be kissed today?
Yeah, he'll say something.
What would please you today? Or
yeah, like we've worked on different phrasing, because it can be really interesting. Sometimes it's about, how would it be all right if I touch you this way, right? Because that's about I would get pleasure this way, right? And then there are other times when it's, oh, tell me what your body desires, and if I can meet that desire, I will. But tell me what it is, and maybe I can't. Maybe we'll just go off on a fantasy. Maybe we'll just start talking, because maybe I can't literally do that. And then sometimes it's just about the sensuality. It's just about, hey, whispering in my ear, how much tension would you like here? How intense are we getting? How much pressure would you like? Can I kiss your neck? And in areas where I've had trauma, it's a great way to revisit, right? Like, do you want to try this today? Do you want to be touched in this particular way that admittedly has had some issues before, but everything feels really good right now? Do you want to explore here? And that's how we have continued to open doors that I thought were glued shut decades ago.
Wow.
Because he revisits, we revisit together, and we practice doing this with other partners too. But of course, now I climb into bed more nights than not with this person. So we practice it together.
So beautiful. What would you say is the what you've birthed in this way of being intimate? Like, who are you that you didn't know you were? What have you experienced? What have you let go of? Who have you become that you never had any idea could be because of this courageous, I'm going to call it a courageous path?
Oh, I got shivers when you asked me that, because I was honestly having a real low moment earlier today.
Oh, really?
One of those moments where you're like, why do I do what I do? You know, just like, we all have them. It was just a trough. I had fallen in it. But you just reminded me that what I have become is someone who can actually ask for things that she doesn't know she can get. Like, I can actually ask for things with a fully open, I don't know whether I'll get this, which means the world is literally my oyster. I could have anything.
Yeah.
And prior to practicing this kind of relationship, I really did believe that there was a pretty narrow confine of what I could have. I believed people could have more. People could have, but not me. Opened me and allowed me to realize that my life was up to me to imagine into being.
Yeah.
And then I have to practice it by asking, by using my words, because words are how we make imagination real.
That is, I'm so grateful that you expressed that you got shivers, because I felt like there's this huge place I could go by asking that question and be met by you there. Thank you for your vulnerability that even every day has its peaks and troughs, let alone 13 years of this new relationship that's still new. Every day, every week. Yeah.
That's what I would wish for everyone.
Right? That their very life is that. Yeah, I so agree. I'd like people to know Jolie Hamilton, Joli Hamilton. It'll be in the show notes. There is a quiz. This is an intense conversation for some to receive. It elicits a lot of emotions, but also a lot of questions. And I understand that you have composed a quiz to help people begin to explore this. So tell us a little bit about that, love.
Right. So I made this quiz because I think a lot of people hear about polyamory and they're like, it sounds interesting, but I don't even know where I would be. And I think that there are questions that we don't know to ask ourselves. So I developed a very, it's a 10-question quiz that'll help you understand whether you are good to go. Let's get you some vocabulary and you could explore. You could start that opening process. It is not throwing the doors open. Don't anybody jump on an app tomorrow. The opening process, or whether you are falling into one of the other categories, including if you are not ready and it's time to work on the foundations, because this conversation, hearing something that sort of shocks you, could be the invitation into, you got to get the foundation shored up. Whether you open or not is not the question. It's the idea of opening may awaken something about the relationship you already have. So this quiz is designed not to convince you to try opening, but instead to make sure that you attend to the phase of your relationship that you're actually in.
Stunning, which is exactly how I roll. Like, having that intimate relationship with yourself, moment to moment, year after year, to me is the foundation or the key to then being able to, as you said, open your mouth and bravely ask for what you desire. I want to thank you on so many levels. This idea, I think I'm pretty good at not good, bad, right, wrong life in general. And I still had a wrongness around jealousy that needed to be integrated someplace else to then be back to whatever center. But then to not have to fix it or judge it and just always see it as my ally that is there speaking to me, bringing me home to my own self. Um, and that it's just survival fear triggering something way back when that I can own and I can cradle and I can soothe and I can listen to and be with, not to get rid of it. That's beautiful. That's one thing. I also wanted to acknowledge this idea of imagining and fantasy and the value. Like I work like Jolie, when I work with couples, I work with him, with her, and the couple, because there's nuances all the way along. And so I love that you work like that. And I really recommend that. And not that I know everything, but I do believe it's healthier for a couple, for each person to be attended to and the relationship to be attended to. There's a whole other bubble that occurs. So that's beautiful. And I love the, just embrace the full catastrophe. Yes. That's messy. No resistance to messy. So I freaking love that as well. And then this capacity of compersion, joy for your partner's joy. I am pretty good at that in all areas other than sex. I have no capacity for compersion with having sex with another, and I'll just be totally straight. That just makes me batshit crazy. So that's the
thing. You know your limit.
That's beautiful. That's where I am today, and I'm totally good with that because it shows me all of the security that I need to have within myself. Like, I want to know what that feels like first. I haven't even had that, let alone wanting to open it up after that. So it gives me more permission to honor where I'm at, and not judge that I'm behind or not spiritual enough or whatever. So,
yeah. Just in case anybody gets that impression, there is no moral value to any relationship structure. There just isn't. You're going to be on your journey, monogamous, not monogamous. As long as you're attending to you, you're good.
Yeah. As long as you deepen and love that intimate relationship with yourself where you are. Yeah. That's home. That's home. Right. Yeah. So thank you for that as well. I wish we could talk for another 2-3 hours, but I have more calls and I know we will continue to get to know each other and support one another and feature one another to our worlds. You're a class act with a big, brave, beautiful heart, and you're very truthful. And it's just such a gem to connect with you. So from that big, beautiful heart of yours to the viewers and to the listeners, how would you like to complete this conversation?
I would like to leave everyone with deep gratitude for holding space. When I'm recording podcasts, I can actually feel the audience. Like, you brought the audience here. And so now I'm feeling this gratitude because you asked the questions. Not everybody does this, but you asked the questions. So I got to go deep into my own work and think about where I've been. And so as people are listening to this, I feel really just held by the fact that other people listened to my story and are holding the fact that it's turned into something. What was incredibly painful turned into something else. And I'm so grateful for that, and to get to rework it by just being listened to. So I really appreciate that. Every day.
My pleasure, our pleasure. Yeah. And so all of you beautiful viewers and listeners, whatever this has brought up, let's just call it good, call it a gift, call it what's next to be with, cradle, listen to within yourself. Take a few moments after this conversation to go be with yourself, be in nature, be with your journal, whatever feels right, and have that conversation with that part of you that's been, woken up from this dialogue, so that you can deepen that intimate truth and hear your heart's wisdom, and then be able to live that. And if Jolie can support you on that journey, or I can, it is an honor and a privilege to be that real and that deep and support your greatest truth as your manifestation of your very life. So we honor your bravery, and we're here for you. And Jolie, thank you so much for this conversation. I'll say my official goodbye in a moment when I press stop on the record button, but just know this is an honor to be a safe place for us to explore everything with honor and courage and imagination. So thank you for being with us today. We love you with all our heart. Until next time, Intimate Conversations. Thank you for joining us for another edgy, transparent episode. I want you to be able to do more, stress less, feel happier, like I have with Magic Mind. So for Intimate Conversations listeners, you can get 40% off with my code INTIMATE20 when you go to magicmind.co/intimate. You're going to feel amazing, I promise. Thank you for being who you are. I love the shit out of you. Until next time, I've got your back.